25 years ago, quarter of a century ago, I went to the US for a PhD degree of political science. And I felt that I learned so much. It's a completely new world for me to understand. You know. And at that time, China was like a quarter of the world's population. And then 5 years ago, I went to Latin America and made several trips there, and then eventually it's so attractive that I decided to stay in Peru to teach for half of a year. And the learning experience is so good that I felt that I received a second PhD degree. And now I'm very happy that I got to the center, a spiritual center of South America. And despite its periphery of Europe. And so why I should want to say this is because China is so different. It's a learning civilization. For me, from very young age, I wondered why some of the people are so like to preach to others. Missionary, want to convert others. And well, Chinese learning civilization never tries to preach, to tell others how to do. And for me, some of the solutions or being preached is so simple. Simple as to say one solution for all the disease. It's a panacea. Like to say electoral democracy would cure everything. So that's a medicine offered to all the underdeveloped countries. But Chinese are very pragmatic people. And my second point I want to say is that the whole world seemed very discontent to their own governments. Let's take for the last year, we started with Arab Spring. The people were not content, were very angry with their governments, the Arabs. And I thought it's because of lack of democracy. But then followed up was the European autumn. You know, we call Europe's fall. And then we thought it's their unique problem. Then came the American winter. Okay. So the whole world is not satisfied with their governments, no matter what kind of a label you give to their government forms. And this year, it was China. So the Chinese people have a pervasive view against the Chinese government and the party by itself. And widespread social discontent. And the breaking point, of course, is the top level government officials, family that abuse power and to get their families rich. But underneath is another problem. Technically, it is because the government and the party have been preoccupied with economic growth. Big construction projects, very fast economic development, and great infrastructure. Well, at the people's small problems, their communal disputes, their conflicts are not really handled. Like a garbage in my neighborhood. Well, Chinese government could build a highway, a high-speed rail in 1 year. But 3 years, they couldn't clean up the garbage is created. Okay, so the problem is that, the second is that the community, that the government no longer pay attention to small things, communal things. On the other hand, because of the marketization, the natural community, which was a major solution for our minor daily life problems, collapsed. And it's replaced by companies, by rule of law, and so on and so forth. So whenever you get into a small dispute with your neighbor, with your neighboring community and so on, that's hundreds of millions of individual families and individuals went to the bureaucracy for solution. But of course the bureaucracy could not solve these problems. And you know, you got civil societies, you got church, you got court to solve those problems. But traditionally in China, it's community. And it's natural community, perceived as a big family. And the whole country is perceived as a very large family, governing by family ethics. It's not governed by law or by majority principle. So here is the way of our problem. So everyone, whether you call it Arab Spring or Europe's fall or American winter, they got their own problems. China has its own problems, not one single solution. And so that means understanding the third point is understanding political system. You got to understand a concrete society. That's what I learned in South America. And so I don't know how to understand my society. You may want to go there and take a look. But let me tell you a story. For 2,000 years at least, 2,500 years at least, no rich family in China could sustain for more than 3 generations. That's Chinese proverb. So we don't have a class society like everywhere else had. And all the rich people today, you see China, and they all get rich in only recent 20 years. Take, for example, my wife. 20 years ago was a nanny with a housekeeper, okay? And her parents are farmers from southwest China, very poor place. And today, it's one of the billionaires in China. Okay, so that's the Chinese rich people. They got the very beautiful identity confusion in the world. They identify with average people, poor people, workers, and the rich. And all the average people identify with the rich. They want to get rich, just like my 2 kids' mother. So here is that my point. The society is different. And in this undifferentiated society, therefore, for 2,000 years, China had a organizationally and politically unified governing group. We never called it party. Party is a very bad word in China. It's a representation of a part of a society. The governing group advocates all the time for the past 2,000 years that they represent the interest of integration of the whole society. And, well, is that perpetual? Well, it has survived 2,000 years, survived agricultural time, industrial time, and today's internet time. But nothing is perpetual. When I see in South America, I know that Spanish Empire is no longer there. And today Spain is only a spiritual center there. And it has long been dominated by North America, a new country. And British Empire is no longer there. And it's very hard to keep the country together. Just like Spain today, it's pretty hard to keep the country together. But China has been the largest country in the world. It has kept the country together. So many people together. That's an amazing thing. And you talk about Germany is the largest country in Europe, but Chinese Communist Party members, more than 80 million people. Okay, and if you think, when I went to Cusco in Peru, and I thought, well, that's a great place that all the Chinese would like to go there and see. You know what? Chinese tourists, every year, with a tourist visa, it's 100 million going out of China. How could Cusco accept those tourists, so many of them? There's no such an infrastructure for that. And therefore, I want to say, this is a unique civilization that we might want to look at that in detail. And therefore, also for us, in a very unique, isolated civilization, it's very eye-opening to learn in the West. Thank you very much.